President Joe Biden will use the first full day of his presidency to launch an array of plans as he turns the page on 4 tumultuous years of Donald Trump. Healthcare, the economy and immigration are all set to be priorities. But it's fighting the coronavirus pandemic that will be at the heart of Mr. Biden's policy initiatives. Among the measures already announced, halting the United States withdrawal from the World Health Organization. The president will also announce his intent to join the COVAX vaccine facility that aims to deliver vaccines to poor countries. That's been confirmed by his chief medical advisor, Anthony Fauci, in the last few hours. Mask wearing, already compulsory on federal property, will be mandated on many trains, airplanes and intercity buses as well. Announcements about some of those changes were made by the US's top infectious diseases expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I am honored to announce that the United States will remain a member of the World Health Organization. The United States plans to work multilaterally to respond to and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. President Biden will issue a directive later today, which will include the intent of the United States to join COVAX and support the ACT Accelerator to advance multilateral efforts for COVID-19 vaccine, therapeutic, and diagnostic distribution, equitable access, and research and development.
That was Dr. Anthony Fauci there. Well, our correspondent in Washington, Gary O'Donoghue, has been monitoring events for us and says tackling the pandemic is at the forefront of President Biden's priorities.
We're expecting to hear from him in person later on today, setting out some of these measures, possibly signing another 10 or so executive actions, which always looks good, doesn't it? Looks like you're doing something, but he faces a huge challenge. Yesterday was the second largest death toll we've had since the pandemic. More than 4,200 people lost their lives in the United States yesterday. And just to give you some kind of scale of what they're facing here, and this is in their own documentation, they say America has 4% of the world's population. We have 25% of the cases and 20% of the deaths. So there is a problem here in America, not least with vaccine distribution, which they're also saying they're going to have to start from scratch again with.
Indeed, a huge problem with 400,000 dead and that number continuing to rise daily. So, Gary, these executive orders are signed. To just help our audience understand, how do they actually become, I suppose, federalized?
Well, this is power that the that the president has as chief executive of the administration, effectively. This is power already delegated to him under the Constitution, under existing legislation. So he can do this stuff. I mean, it's limited in terms of how much money you can spend. I mean, it's within existing budgets, etc., or in existing discretionary budgets. But this sort of stuff can be done because you saw, I mean, quite a lot was done by President Trump through executive action as well. I mean, and some of the most controversial things were done through executive action by Donald Trump. So, you know, what you can sign away with a pen, you can undo with a pen, which is part of the system here. So he will hope some of that can be done. But a lot of the sort of heavy lifting when it comes to the pandemic is going to have to fall on legislation. So this $1.9 trillion bill that he wants Congress to pass, that will give a lot of money to local states in particular, to businesses, to individuals as well, to try and cope with the consequences of the pandemic and indeed with the business of getting it under control.
Gary O'Donoghue there. Well, in Europe, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel has welcomed the start of Joe Biden's presidency in the United States, saying she sees a much broader scope for political agreement. In France, President Macron said the inauguration was a significant day for the American people. But our Paris correspondent Hugh Schofield says beyond the initial congratulations, there are tricky issues ahead.
Like most European countries, there's an initial reaction, which is, of course, overwhelmingly favourable and delighted and relieved that the the kind of unpredictability of the last few years is over, and that there's a return, or promises to be a return, to conventional, classical multilateralism in which normal people do normal things and hold normal meetings that aren't disrupted in ways that no one can foresee. So that's a massive relief too. But I mean, the second reaction kicks in straight away, and you're hearing this not just here but across Europe, of course, that any attempt to see the situation today as a simple return to the status quo ante and to welcome it or to wish it were so is false as well. Apart from anything else, the relationship with Obama was not all sweetness and light. But on top of that, of course, the world has changed. President Trump may have been reviled over here, but he has done things which some people, the effect of which some people welcome. One of those in particular is very important in France, which is the kind of forging of a kind of European sense of unity. It's very easy and handy to have a kind of common, not enemy, but someone, a kind of hate figure. And in Trump, that was what France and Germany had, and the other nations of Europe as well, of course. And that meant that the French agenda for pushing a more sovereign Europe, particularly in the field of defense, was encouraged and advanced. That is still what President Macron wants, but he's aware that there might be a temptation from some European countries to go back to their instinct to look to America as the sort of protecting agent. And his view would be that that's wrong. The world has changed. America's attention is elsewhere, and it is up to Europe to pursue this sort of sovereign idea all the more forcefully, even though there is now a more friendly figure in Washington.
Hugh Schofield reporting there.